As human beings, we live with the knowledge of the poet who wrote, "It is a most sincere truth that this adage makes us see. Only one who was never born can never a death's head be." Life and death are intertwined. They are part of the same story. And so it is important for us each year to find ways to walk among that intersection, to find the places where we can touch those connections. Their light shines on. And it's not a single source of light, it's several braided together. The first beam is that piercing light of sorrow, that crazy light which bounces around, illuminating this and plunging that into darkness. Those of you who have experienced this know that that's a twisting, agonizing, sweet, sour, erratic kind of light that's like nothing else seen before in a mourner's life. I sit with many people in those first moments as this odd new light is kindled in their life, and I see the way its beam illuminates both the sorrowful and the joyful. And then I have the privilege, often, of sitting with people again, when they have found a more peaceful, more steady beam in the light of memory. So in that spirit, I ask you to take once again into your heart the names of those whom you said aloud or who you whispered within your own heart, your beloved dead. Take them into your heart again and think about the ways that they are with you still, the way their light shines on. Perhaps it's on a moonlit night when you take a moment to step away from the busyness of your activities of the evening and pause in the backyard. And in that timeless act of reverence and wonder, you gaze at the glowing orb before you and you remember how your partner used to sing to the moon. Or maybe you prepare her favorite food and you stop to lick the rim of the bowl as she thought you never saw her do. Or maybe it's when your children say something that you know your parents would have laughed out loud to hear. Their light shines on. And then there's that other beam of their light, which is an otherworldly. It's the glow of stars. It's the beckoning, the maddening promise of the celestial bodies, the light of mystery. If I were to ask you, if I were to ask each of you to try to write about the energy of love, or to try to draw what a person's spirit looks like, or make a sculpture that shows what consciousness is, a few of us might plunge into this, but most of us would be flummoxed. And yet, there are ways that we know something to be true and yet still cannot describe it in a precise way or in any way at all. Religion is often the container for these kind of maddening, unanswerable questions, because one of its purposes is to weave patterns of meaning from the threads of our lives and to give us ways to think about the unknowable, including that persistent and perplexing relationship between the living and the dead, which does not end as definitively as the cessation of breath or of a heart. Many religions and cultures have the traditions that mark this question, this continued mysterious connection. And most of these festivals, as it happens, occur in that period sort of between August and October, near the end of summer, near the end of the harvest season. And they demonstrate their own form of immortality, because despite many, many efforts from institutional and patriarchal systems to have them die, they somehow, these traditions and customs, they somehow live on. The Gaelic festival of Samhain, which is also regionally pronounced Shavna, which is believed to mean something basic like summer's end, recognizes that we all have seasons of fallow and birth in our lives. And at this time of year, the Celts believe that the veil between the living and the dying is especially thin. And so this festival marks, with the fruits of the harvest, this fertile period, which is the beginning of the fallow and the start of the new year, which begins on what we know to be Halloween. The Japanese festival of Obon occurs in August, and it honors the spirits of the ancestors whom we call upon to guide us and whom are dependent on us for continued merit and honor in the world. Our procession of candles was inspired from the Obon ceremony that I observed at the Rishoku Sakai Buddhist service in Pacifica last summer, and the lantern on the front of our order of service was a picture I took from there as well. And like the Gaelic altars, the Japanese altars bear products of the harvest. The foods and the drinks are left for the ancestors to enjoy, part of renewing that merit which is the work of the living to do. And the indigenous peoples, the indigenous Mexican peoples, those who existed before the arrival of Spanish culture into this new world, honored the connection with two actual services, two Dias de los Muertos. The first was initially around August 8th, the beginning of August, and it was known as the small feast for the dead because it honored children who were lost and departed. And the other was at the end of the month, August 28th, and was remembering the adult dead. Christianity came and tried to conquer these festivals, tried to mask these customs, and they became disguised as the Catholic festivals of All Saints and All Souls Days. But despite the attempts to wipe them out, what were considered these unsavory remembrances, they continued until the defeated church just gave up and incorporated them. You might say that the human need to remember the ways that the light of the dead shines has its own kind of eternity. So these festivals help us to remember the connection between the energy of this world and the next, and they cast a familiar, even comical shape over the unknown, as we talked about in our Time for All Ages, because sometimes we need ways to approach those things that cause us fear, and sometimes that is through humor. But what we know always is if we do not approach these important things in our lives, then we do not continue to receive the light of those who are gone. So think about this. Think about your own relationship with death, about how you faced your fears there, and how you will prepare those who love you when your time comes. Ask yourself, as I do each year during this service, do I have a vocabulary for death? Because these rituals, unintelligible though they may seem, prepare us for the inevitable dialogue with the end of life. And poet and scholar Rafael Jesus Gonzalez explains it this way. In Mexico, we are not cheated of our sorrow that easily or of our joy. We crowd the rooms of our dying, and hospital rules cannot keep us out. We die to the whispers, caresses, prayers of family and friends in someone's arms or with someone holding our hand, and we celebrate our dead with crying and lamentation and laughter and sometimes curses and songs in the long wake. And there is food and tequila and beer, which we did not put on our altar today, and frothy sweet chocolate and bitter black coffee. And then we invite our dead to join us at least once a year. We put out food for them, their favorite dishes or drinks, especially baked bread, tequila, and yellow marigolds to make them glad. And we light lights, the same lights which adorn our weddings, because life and death are a continuum in the adventure of being human. We keep our memories alive, because our dead are precious to us. Only by celebrating their preciousness do we learn to hold the preciousness of the living. For it may be that at any moment the living may leave us, or we them, and join the vast ranks of the dead. More and more Unitarian Universalist congregations have returned to the custom of honoring All Souls Day, which is important in our Universalist tradition because of our theological assertion that all souls are redeemed, that all souls are saved and carry light. And more are also observing Dia de los Muertos, with its ritual and pageantry which offers a more playful way to reclaim the light of our beloved dead. Gonzalez says he thinks he knows why. Why people with a lot of education and sophistication and money and property, people who normally would not even imagine doing such things, are drawn to these festivals. He says that our culture actually works against this because healing has become such a private affair and death has become such a hush-hush matter. We isolate death, we medicalize it, we commodify it, and we contain it. Our culture treats death as if it were less appropriate for our children than R-rated games and movies. We hustle them out of its company, we invite them to avert their heads. Many people over the years have told us about the pain of a loss, a pain which was made so much worse by the fact that in their family's culture, they were not to ever speak of it, not to ever acknowledge it, not to ever have a place to hold it. Their light shines on, and in these observances, the light of celebration twines around its kissing cousin, which is grief. Their everlasting light shines on, and its beams tangle and interweave and become part of the ordinary weave of our days. So, once a year, we are called to make it extraordinary, to call it to our consciousness, to honor it, and to make it real. These are the words of the Unitarian poet May Sarton in her poem, All Souls. Did someone say that there would be an end? An end, oh, an end to love and mourning. What has been once so interwoven cannot be raveled, nor the gift ungiven. Now the dead move through all of us, still glowing, mother and child, lover and lover mated, are wound and bound together and flowing. And what has been plaited cannot be unplaited, only the strands grow richer with each loss, and memory becomes and makes kings and queens of us. Dark into light, light into darkness, spin. When all the birds have flown to some real haven, we who find shelter in the warmth within, listen and feel new cherished, new forgiven. As the lost human voices speak through us and blend our complex love, our mourning without end. Our mourning without end, our connection with the mysterious without end, our celebration and joy in relationship without end. Their light shines on. We hold it with reverence, with joy, with sorrow, with contemplation, and in celebration. May we be the ones to make it so.